Okay, so we're going to look at how to build a application on Giraffe using the SDK. One of my favorite things about Giraffe for an enterprise is it's completely extensible, flexible, customizable. And we won't go through all of those ways in this video to customize Giraffe, but we will go through how to build an application. This may be relevant to you if you're trying to bring in your own enterprise data into Giraffe, or if you're trying to build an application to achieve a specific workflow, or thirdly, if you're trying to develop an application that you want to monetize and you want to leverage what Giraffe has done, but take it a step further into your domain expertise. So let's use an app that I built earlier. You can see over here on the right-hand side, I have Giraffe Enterprise open. It's filtered down to my home space. We're going to go look at a specific project in a second. And on the left, I have the website. So I really want to make sure we don't miss any steps here. And the tool I'm going to be using to be writing code on, there'll be two tools I'll use. One is Visual Studio, and the other will be ChatGPT. So quite simple, and I'm not going to go crazy here, but I will show you a little bit about how this works. Okay, so in Giraffe, let's navigate to a project where I have a SDK project ready to roll, SDK app ready to roll. You can see as I load up a project, it's now over here on the right-hand side. I have the iframe app, and the iframe app is loading up my app. Now the iframe app, if you've never used it for the first time, it's just literally a container that will point towards a JavaScript application at a specific URL, or any kind of application at a specific URL. My URL here is locally hosted. I'll show you how to change that in a second. And I've written this application over here in Visual Studio. Here it is. You can see it's this regrid query app. There are all the components to it, and off we go. So the iframe app lives. If you want to add it to your project so you can begin experimenting, it lives in the App Store, and it's one of the first projects, one of the first apps you'll find. It's called iframe, and you just hit Add to Project. Once that's there, that'll boot up and it'll likely show you nothing. So to change the URL that it's looking at, we go over here to Advanced. We open up the JSON editor. The app I want to edit is the iframe app. And I change that URL that it's looking at to look at the location where my app is hosted. Because I'm developing this on my local machine, it's looking at the local host, and then my little client is running at 5173, so that's where I point it. Okay, so let's wind back a step. You can develop applications from scratch if you want. However, Giraffe makes things nice and easy for you with our GitHub repository and our documentation. So where is all that on the website? Well, we can scroll down here and we can go straight to the knowledge base or straight to the SDK. Let's go to the SDK, and that link's broken. Perfect. But we'll go to now we're on the knowledge base, we'll go to the SDK container over here. And there's all sorts of great stuff here that I recommend reading through for your first time. The JavaScript SDK does a great job of describing what's available for you to use and to leverage as a way of controlling both Giraffe or any external application that you might have. Lots of things to read here, lots of different places to go. We're going to keep this quite simple just to make the video easy to understand. But let's hit the iframe SDK setup. Now, what I would follow option 1 here, depending on how much you like to have freedom versus a place to start. I love to have a place to start. So clicking on the repo takes us right here, and you can see I just downloaded this whole repository. And when I pop into my Visual Studio environment, you can see there are all those folders, and I used them as the template to get started on my project here. Now, the other side of this application I developed is Regrid's documentation on their API. I have a valid API key for Regrid, so that is obviously one step out of the way. But let's open up Regrid's API documentation, and you can see all the endpoints here are available to me. So this is a fairly simple app that basically says, I have users that want to search for parcels based on different criteria. Regrid has that criteria. And so all we need is a form that constructs an endpoint that hits the Regrid API and returns to Giraffe a payload. So if you look through my app, it's very simple. Basically, it starts with a JavaScript form, turns that into a URL. That URL returns basically a GeoJSON packet, which we then convert to a Giraffe layer. And I won't go through all the code base, but it's in there. Now, you may be wondering, how do I understand what features and functions are available to me via the SDK from Giraffe? And that's a very legitimate question. So as you are looking through the examples, you'll get some great ideas of what different components are available through Giraffe. But also, you can go and look at the SDK commands available at this location and get a sense of what all it can do. And it's helpful to have an understanding of Giraffe, obviously, before you really understand what all these things mean. But you can see quite a lot of control over the Giraffe application that you can write within the SDK. So notably, let's run this little app and I'll show you what it does so you can at least get your bearings slightly. So like I said, this form is very simple. It just constructs a URL that then fires off to the Regrid API. So I'm going to say, let's make this quite specific. I want to look for industrial parcels over 10 acres in the Hillsborough County area. Hit fetch parcels. It's now running that query and it's returning a result, which then gets published to Giraffe as a temporary layer, which I can then go and open a table on and have a look at all those results. Right? So quite simple, but elegant in that all I did was format a query and then publish it to some native Giraffe functionality called temporary layer. So if you have a look at the possible list of commands, and there's all sorts of things like listeners, the command I was using there is add temp layer. So it's going to add temp layer and it converts that GeoJSON return into a format that the temp layer can understand. Now, I'm no programmer, and you maybe can tell that already. So how did I do this? Well, I did this with ChatGPT. So let's open up ChatGPT, and I'll show you my list of prompts in order to get to the outcome that we had here. And you can see at many points in the process, I would copy and paste code from the GitHub repository to kind of stimulate what the LLM needed. And, I would again defer to people who are more experienced at working with LLMs than me, but it's a great way to bootstrap its knowledge on Giraffe. It's not overly complex. You can also feed it the documentation, but nonetheless, I'd suggest having a look at that. So, or every now and then copying and pasting code back into ChatGPT so it understands. The last piece of the puzzle, obviously, is getting my Visual Studio environment working so I can host it on my machine. I'm going to assume for the purpose of this video that you know how to do that. But once I've got it, I go to my app.tsx location, I start the terminal, I start the little server off, and then it's hosted and ready to go. And now, if I develop something, or if I change something, for instance, maybe I want to change this text at the top, wherever that might be. Here it is. Hi guys, testing my real-time dev environment. Save. There it is, see? So if you want to go and explore whatever other features you can leverage from Giraffe, I would recommend this GI docs location. You can do all sorts of cool things like take what's on the map and then pass that off to an API or transform it and spit it back. You can get the state of the app, you can get the states of other apps. So definitely have a play and definitely look through the examples that are on the GitHub repository to get some ideas about what you could do. Some great applications that are worth looking at: Local Logic, the Isochrone app. These are all really nice applications that have been developed by third parties that bring in either enterprise information or bring in market data. The Isochrone app is awesome. If you just have a quick look at this, this is using the Mapbox Isochrone API, and we just place down an isochrone on the map. Wherever it's gone. Got too much open here. Let's close down the wetlands. There it is, the isochrone source. And as I move that around, you can see it's redrawing my isochrone, which in and of itself is on a temporary layer. So really, I think this is a really valuable tool for the platform. And if you're interested in it, I go straight to the GitHub, download it, experiment with Giraffe, and buzz us if you want to get a trial license to check it out at your organization. Thanks.